One of the things I've been really thinking about a lot over, actually especially since our May retreat in Foundry leadership. At that retreat, I talked about the giving and receiving. And I actually drew this as an infinity loop. On the left is giving, and on the right is receiving. And in that infinity loop, we have this flow back and forth between everybody in the world, what we are giving, what we are putting out into the world, and then what we are receiving. And actually, the way I picture this is that this infinity loop, that the loops can get bigger, like a larger infinity, or they can kind of shrink down, especially if you block the flow at either end of this constant feedback loop in the world, in our lives. And one of the places that I realized that has blocked the flow for me and for so many people is actually the receiving side, is being willing to receive in ways that are just open-ended, saying, I will receive. I don't need to do something. I don't need to work hard. I can just receive. I can be open to receiving the gifts that life wants to give me. And I'll tell you, when I started working on that, a few things miraculous happened, but one of the big ones was this, that for years, I've had a very difficult relationship with my mother. And for years, I had, when things were rough, I had asked, can you help out a little bit financially with this? Give us a loan here at least for something or whatnot. And it was always just this closed arm posture of like, no, I'm saving for my retirement and all that. Or, well, she's past retirement, but, saving for whatever. And very, like, my whole life, I had just grown to expect that she would never help out at all. And then suddenly, in June of last year, just 1 month after I started really talking about this and thinking about receiving and opening to receiving more, suddenly out of the blue, I got a somewhat big check from her, thousands level check, just out of the blue. And she's like, oh, I thought I would help you. I know that you're struggling, especially in this environment. And so I just thought I would help you out. And since then, she's turned that into like a regular monthly thing of just sending some help. And it's like, what? Like, I never expected it. It was like, literally, I was in tears when that first check came, because I really thought she would go to her grave and I would just feel like I was like given the short shrift somehow. And then maybe there's something left over after she dies or something. That's the attitude I had. But what was also interesting about all of that is the giving side from my thing. So that was a receiving thing for me. But on the giving side, I really got into a mode with her of just like, yeah, I don't know if I'm ever going to have a good relationship with her, if she's ever going to meet my expectations. But I'm just, she has struggled with various things. This current political environment really causes her a lot of struggle. I've kind of worked through it and I'm doing better with it, but she has not worked through it. So anyway, she really struggles with various things. And I last, like a year ago, spring, I started turning into this sort of mode of just more compassion for her, just feeling like, she doesn't have a long time left, and I don't want this relationship with her to be an expectation of some kind of transactionality anymore. I want to let go of that. I just want to do what I can to be supportive. I can't, do a lot, but I can do a little bit. And so since then, I've helped her a little bit with her latest book project to try to just edit it and make it more well written. I don't have a lot of time for that, but I've done what I can. And and I haven't done it with any expectation of reward, but then that's why she continued sending me checks. She's like, oh, you're working on this book project. And then recently I was like, no, I've really got to focus on some new business stuff I'm doing to make this new thing work. And I don't have a lot of time for the book right now. And she said, oh, it's okay. I'll just keep sending this. Again, I had no expectation. I just got into a pure giving mode of like giving compassion and giving what support I can to her, just because I felt like it felt good. I felt like a better person in doing that. And then opening to the receiving of like, yeah, I don't have to work hard for this money that's coming in. It just comes in because she just feels like doing it. And that, I think, epitomizes where we are headed, all of us collectively who are interested in moving into higher resonance, higher vibration, higher reality, is that we start breaking the link between giving and receiving. In other words, it no longer becomes transactional, or it's much less transactional. And I very much, as a business owner who's struggled with money and stuff, I've very much had this. I mean, it's been up and down. It hasn't always been a struggle. I've had some very good times too. I mean, not very good times, never like, whoa, I'm a millionaire, not even close, but some good times. So it is never this, well, I always pursued it as a transactional thing. I'm like, well, that's what business mentors teach. That's what, you got to do this marketing. And then as a result of the marketing and sales process, you get a specific customer who pays you a specific amount. And what's so interesting is that when I started releasing that need in the business, actually things went better, and it became a different kind of problem than we experienced before. So in our Grant Foundry Accelerator, what happened is, always before it was like, well, do we have enough clients, and a chase for clients? As of summer of last year, we actually had too many clients for the resources available, the staffing, coaching resources available. And it has literally been full since then, with a few times when spots opened up, but so far have gotten filled immediately. And we have done very, very little marketing. People just show up, referrals and just random whatever. And, we'll do a little marketing here and there, but the transactional thing literally isn't working. Like, weirdly enough, I sent an email because we did have a couple spots opening up this summer, and I sent a couple of emails, just like, hey, we've got this grant writing thing. And maybe they weren't the best written emails and stuff, but we had very poor response to those, like surprisingly poor response. Usually we get some kind of response. And then I was like, well, screw it, whatever, that didn't work. So then I moved on to other things. And then in the subsequent weeks, like 3 new people showed up. And so we got 3 new clients. Just random other things, random other ways. So again, this is really pointing to something important, and it's been important to me. And again, I wasn't going to talk about it, but I think it is important because I think all of us have been conditioned to the money chase, conditioned to the idea that we've got to work hard and chase the money, chase the resources of whatever kind, whether it's money for our own personal use or whether it's money for, let's say, a research lab or a business, that it is going to be a chase. It is going, and we have to do all sorts of transactional stuff to make it work. For years, I wasn't a heavy follower of, but I definitely listened to recordings from Esther Hicks, Abraham Hicks, and she always talked about in her marketing that they weren't going to go out and try to market things heavily. They would just put it out there and the right people would show up. And at the time I was like, how does that work? Is that really true? Is that really right? And more recently, I have been coming more and more to that point of view. And I think we are all, not just individually, like I think before individually people could make that shift if they were able to get into a state of high enough resonance and not having fear about it. not getting into the fear of will there be enough money in whatever line, and instead getting into just a feeling of like, oh yeah, the money's going to show up one way or another. I'll be fine. And then just doing what you are inspired to do and giving as a result. And then things show up. And, there's maybe a nuance in there of still opening the door, which I think has to do with the receiving side of the loop, where so many of us have dysfunctions going on because we emotionally feel, and this is going a little bit deep, but, I'm here to be vulnerable. So I've been going through layers of release work, and I will talk about that separately. But in one of those layers of release work, I still remember, being there. I often do it in the morning before I get up out of bed, and I'll wake up and feel like, okay, I don't feel great right now. There's some kind of heavy emotion or something hanging around that I need to do some processing on. So instead of just getting up, I'll sit with it, and wait to see what that's about. And this one morning, it ended up being several hours and got deeper and deeper through layers of just intense emotion about all of this stuff that ultimately got to this layer of a feeling, not a thought, a feeling of being broken, a feeling of being just fundamentally like wrong, broken, misshapen, like just that feeling like there's something wrong with me. And I was like, where did that come from? Now that's another whole question. Where did it come from? And we can talk about that separately. But I really understood in that time, feeling that this feeling of fundamentally being broken, which was embedded so deep under so many layers, was driving so much of the fear and so much of the need that I felt to constantly be striving to do more, to work harder, to create more, to blah, 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 blah. Do all of this transactional stuff. And what I realized also with that energy is that energy of brokenness was not exclusively mine. That this was really a humanity-wide energy that, yeah, some people have moved beyond it. Some people have released it. But so many people in humanity were still carrying that energy of brokenness, and that energy of brokenness requires us to constantly feel like we need to strive, we need to work hard, we need to be doing more, blah, 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 blah. And I do think some of that collective energy has actually been released over the last few months. If you have noticed feeling maybe a little bit lighter, maybe a little bit less weighed down by things, there have been some huge collective energy shifts in the first half of 2026, or I guess the first quarter so far as of when I'm recording this. And so, nonetheless, though, you may have, even if the collective energy shifted, you may have something residual there, and it might be worth looking at, because that was one of the things that was driving my sense of not being able to receive. Because when I felt broken, I felt undeserving. So like there was we've talked about in some of the past things that I've done, we've talked about this idea of deservingness. Do you feel deservingness? And how we need to tune into more of an energy or feeling of deservingness. And what I realized is this deeper layer of feeling broken was what was preventing me from really absorbing this idea, this feeling, not idea, feeling of deservingness. Like, I deserve an awesome experience of this life, as we all do. I deserve it. I can't control other people's deservingness, but I am responsible for my deservingness, and I wasn't able to do it until I got to that broken layer. And that goes back to that infinity loop of receiving, because if we don't feel deserving, because we feel broken, then we don't feel like we can receive. We don't feel like we can receive the money, the whatever it is. We block the openings to that. We push it away. That this giving receiving loop, the idea behind that is that it's an infinite loop of us giving from our gifts, not just giving in like a running around doing hard work kind of thing, work that we don't want to do, but really tuning into what gifts are we here to share and giving of those plentifully as we can, and simultaneously opening to the receiving, which might not come from the same people that we give to. That's the key point, is that loop operates on a universal scale. It is not just a literal, I give to you and you must give to me. And the more I've treated my business like that and my marketing like that so far, I mean, this has only been a year and I've been absorbing this and processing these layers, but the better things have worked. Like surprising positive things have happened when I just get into that spirit instead of like, oh no, I have to do something. That's when things shut down. And that is what I believe this new energy is truly calling for, is for us to give of our gifts and receive from others, often things that are produced from their gifts, and not be so transactional about it. And I think it's powerful when we do that. I have a whole other line of thought that's, I'm like, oh, I should share that. But no, I mean, my problem is I always add things and add things and add things to videos, and they get really long, and then people don't want to watch them. So I'll leave that there and just give you a hint of the next thing, which is I've been writing about and contemplating, and I'm about to make one or several social media videos about this idea of universal mind. So just give you a brief hint. Universal mind, in my mind, is the engine that makes all of this happening. It's like the engine for the giving and receiving loop that matches people who need something and are open to receiving it up with the gifts from others, and matches up our gifts to those who receive it. This is not to say we completely avoid transactionality. Sometimes, our world still has a lot of that. And so sometimes that is the best way to match the giving and receiving of those things up. So it's not like I'm just going to close my business and become a charity yet. Although perhaps that is the direction 5 to 10, 20 years in the future, where many more people will be operating that way. That's what I see for the future. But this is a transition period for everybody in humanity. So I do think, though, it is important to start open to the receiving and opening more to just the giving freely, especially of your gifts. Not just giving in a hard work sense, because I'll give you a hint of another thing that I need to talk about on a separate video, which is I've been receiving so many messages of being, not doing. And I actually saw a video from Mel Lawson on the same concept just today, this morning. And I've been receiving this for months. It's so weird how now that I'm getting my own downloads and then still watching other people like that, it's like, wait, this is exactly the same thing. We're getting it independently, which to me is good scientific evidence that there's something to it. Nonetheless, I also think of being as a state of receiving, as a state, that state of just like, I am open to receiving the gifts of the universe. And I'm not talking about just money. It's receiving, when I sit down and eat ice cream, really receiving the experience of that. Or just yesterday, I went to my daughter's track meet, and really, it's the first time I went there and didn't just feel impatient and like I wanted everything to be over with. I mean, it was a bit cold, so I was impatient in that sense of like, ooh, I want to I want to get out of the cold. But I didn't feel impatient for it all to be over. I was just there watching the kids, watching what was happening, and just receiving it all. And just a little thing that happened, like, so on the way back, I was talking to my daughter about her college, one of my daughters, about a college orientation, and how we would have to get up really early one morning if we stayed where we wanted to stay to get to the airport in time for that flight. She said, it's okay. And I was like, yeah, okay, we can make that work, so that we didn't have to do some complex stuff and pay more money. Anyway, I came back and I was still in that good, just receiving state. And I got a notice from the airline. And the notice said, your flight has been changed. And at first I was like, oh no, like I got into a little bit of fear of like, oh no, they changed this. And then I was like, no, things work out for me. I got back into that energy of things work out for me. And then I opened it up, and literally the very flight that we were talking about, just on the car drive back here, like within a half an hour, I was reading an email that said they had delayed that flight, like it's a different flight or something, I don't know, whatever, an hour and 20 minutes later. So suddenly we're not having to get up like nearly as early in the morning. That was really cool. And that's what universal mind does for us when we open that giving and receiving loop. It builds a bigger infinity because we're all open to the giving and we're all open to the receiving. And isn't that cool? The idea of moving forward into a world that will be more and more of that. It's not a world where we just sit around and meditate and do nothing. It's a world where instead we're working in alignment with our gifts, doing things that inspire, delight, and help others that we love to do and that are just easy for us because it's part of our gift. And other people are doing the same, and we are receiving of that. Sounds like an awesome world. And that's the world that I'm, in a general conceptual sense, visualizing for our future. And that I'm working on creating personally for myself in the meantime, because ultimately it has to start with each of us. So I hope that was helpful for you. I'll try to do another shorter update, and then I have the longer thing too, which you can take more time on. Maybe this is the most timely thing for right now. I don't know. Do what feels right. All right, I'll see you later.